the only savior of mankind and the commander of Aggressive Christianity Missions Training Corps.
They don't want to hear about Jesus Christ. They don't want to hear the truth. They want to be just like Americans. You want to be like us? Cheap? You want to be cheap? You want to be trash? You want to be white trash? Is that what you want to be? You want to be American? That's what you are. You're cheap and you're trashy. That's why we got so many fat housewives these days. Fat Jezebels sitting around eating.
Well, I can't help but I'm just like this. And the very fact, Hakarabobo, that Lazarus was dead should put us to shame. Come out of the place of death. Shakarabaya tikataye. And into the place of life. Yay! 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 Look to me. Okay?
This is Deborah and James Green. They're the generals of a Cibola County-based religious group called the Aggressive Christianity Missions Training Corps.
At that time, I didn't think it was a cult. No, nobody in there thinks of themselves as being in a cult.
I said you're a cult. The government agents that destroyed Jim Jones were also a cult. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, there goes cult phobia.
Members say they escaped from the commune where they witnessed horrific crimes against children.
It was a horrible situation, disgusting to say the least.
Cibola County Sheriff's deputies found one child buried who had been dead at least 2 years.
Lord, you know, I can't do that. It'll kill me. That's what I want, my child. Huh?
Well, the reason I preach is because there's a lot of people that do not believe, that need to believe, that need to be redeemed.
To sleep with younger children and all that stuff, they should be forgiven.
But God will forgive sin if we are truly repentant.
So
okay, going on here. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit.
Today, I want to talk about the Aggressive Christianity Mission Training Corps. What a mouthful, and you guys really are not ready. Y'all ain't ready for this shit. This group, cult, they started as they were hippies. And then they slowly morphed into this militant cult that seems to have gotten worse and worse and worse. And I'm going to tell you from now, prepare yourselves. The ending is going to piss you off. You know how you hear in Christianity, sometimes people say, turn the other cheek? Okay, not these people. They're going to turn you around and do something to your other cheek. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm telling you. They like to talk about other people and other things, that they're bad and evil, and they call the TV the one-eyed devil. But really, the one-eyed devil is in their pantaloons. It's me again. This video is sponsored by Classy. As you know, they've sponsored me before and they sponsored me again, which I'm so grateful for. They make these amazing tops where the bra is built in, but their pads, you can mix and match the sizes with the tops. You could have like a large cup size and a small top, or small cup size and a large top, or whatever. You can make it work for you. This time I wanted to show you another one of their tops. This one I like because it's way more comfortable and casual. I've been wearing it a lot. I kind of get bummed out when it's in the hamper and I don't feel like doing my laundry. If you guys are interested, please click the link in my description, or you could also scan the QR code on screen and it will get you 20% off of your first Classy order with my code CLASSY636. Check them out and tell them me and the girls, you know who, the two girls that are always with me, sent you. Okay, thank you. Bye. See you later, like in a second. So there's this guy, all right? His name was James Green, and he was from Kentucky. And he grew up in a traditional Christian home, raised in the church. Everything was fine. And then the 60s happened, and he was like, okay, I don't want to be in Kentucky. I want to be in California, where the party's happening. So he hitchhiked to California. He went to the Sacramento area. There he met another hippie, a woman. Her name was Leela Carter, and she seemed like a sweetheart, except she's not. She's a bitch. Sorry. Oh my God. No, trust me. You're going to be like, wow, you're really holding back. Just let me get through this. Unlike James, who was born in a traditional Christian home, Leela was born in a home that was pagan, and they practiced humanist beliefs. Her father was Native American. He was from the Sioux tribe, and her mother, I think, was some kind of European American. I'm not sure. But in any case, she was raised in that sort of hippie kind of lifestyle already. The problem is her father was an alcoholic, which sucks. And so her parents got divorced when she was young. And she says, according to, their website, so take it with a grain of salt, that she was a straight A student all throughout high school and college. And she kind of had to support herself throughout that. And she did that by working at a movie theater where sometimes it was like she was really on hard times. So she would live off of just the popcorn that she got for free at the movie theater. According to Leela, her life kind of changed because her brother died of lung cancer when she was just 20 years old. This was really awful for her. And so she kind of got sucked into, she said, that the hippie world and decided to tune in and drop out. And then that's when she joined a hippie commune called the Bear Tribe. Well, who else joined that commune? James, remember him? Yes. So now they're both part of the same commune and they fall in love. How nice for them. One of the leaders of this bear tribe was someone who went by the name of Sun Bear, and he was 54 years old at the time, and his lover was a 22-year-old woman named Mara. Now, remember this for later. Even back then, when they were part of the bear tribe, Leela and James were one of the most radical members of that commune. Like the people that knew them back then say that they would just wear loincloths all day and howl at the moon, and they were doing these like blood oaths and cutting their hands and bonding and a blood brother oath or whatever you call it. So they were very intense. Like they don't do anything half-ass, these people. If they're into something, they're going to do it all the way. The Bear Tribe, they moved to the Sierra Nevada foothills, like near Sacramento, and they kind of were living off grid in this commune. So they shared everything: free love, free drugs, good time, party. And then something happened that would change their lives. The Bear Tribe, they decided that they were going to go to Montana to look for land. They were going to move to Montana as this commune. And now Leela and James are married. And so James is going to scout this land while Leela is in the cabin with the rest of the commune. And, their main mode of transportation was hitchhiking. So he shows up, James, with this guy who gave him a ride, a stranger. And he tells her, "This stranger told me, quote, I am the gospel of Jesus Christ." And so Leela's like, I don't know about all that. And so she says that they had some debates and everything. And the guy very lovingly told them, like, listen, Jesus saves. All you have to do is repent your sins and he's going to save you. And so now that her husband was the gospel of Jesus Christ and they decided that they wanted to be saved, she said they did this prayer and they said, quote, where's the prayer? Dear Lord Jesus, take this garbage that is my life and make me useful to your kingdom. And they said after that, they decided they're going to leave this bear tribe, okay? And they're going back where? To Kentucky, where James is from. And there they start going to this local church where James starts training how to be a pastor. And he does this for 4 years in Kentucky, and they're making, being Christians a big part of their life. And they decide, you know what? We want to be missionaries. Oh, wait, I forgot to mention. In between the time where he was training and before they were missionaries, they had 2 kids. They had a daughter first. Her name was Sarah. And then they had a son. His name was Josh. It was after Josh was born that they decided they want to be missionaries. And they started traveling through Central America, preaching the gospel. Now it's the late 70s and they kind of ran out of money. And so they're like, okay, we're going to go to Miami, Florida. And they started working for the Salvation Army. Now, this is really where they kind of got their ideas from, but they took it way left and way crazy. So the Salvation Army, one of the co-founders, or I think the co-founder, was a woman named Catherine Booth. And I think this was like in the 1800s, but there's a sermon that she gave. You can even find books of it and stuff online. and it was titled Aggressive Christianity. This is thought to be the inspiration of what they would end up doing, with the whole military thing and that sort of vibe. But again, they went really crazy with it. So now it's 1981, and they decide, okay, we want to go to Sacramento, where they met. They want to go there and they want to do their own thing. They want to start their own ministry. They call it the Free Love Ministries. And the thing is, okay, James, apparently he had a back problem. And so he would lay around a lot because his back hurt. So Leela would take care of the kids all day, and then at night she would go and work at a hospital. And at the same time, right, James is at home with his bad back, and so they're talking about this Free Love Ministries that they want to start. So he's writing a lot of things, getting their sort of what they believe in together, their gospel, if you will. And they start also recruiting people, but it's mostly people who just need a place to stay because they have this home and they let people come stay with them, and then they just are constantly preaching to them their beliefs and stuff. And then they go with these people and they start handing out flyers and things to people at the bus stop or whatever and tell them, hey, do you want to come live with us? Because Free Love Ministries, when it started, it wasn't crazy. It was kind of had elements of this hippie commune lifestyle that they were doing. They were vegetarian, which was very common with hippies at the time. They believed in, sharing the resources, living together, all like a commune, right? But the only difference was it was for Jesus. When they were in Sacramento and they had the Free Love Ministries, their daughter, Sarah, she was like 8 years old at this time. And she says that this was really kind of the best time in her life because before that, they were, remember, missionaries in Central America. They were always traveling, always on the go. She never really felt settled. And so now that they had this home and her mom had this job and a routine, she started going to school. She started making friends and she was kind of happy. But it wouldn't last long. In the process of them trying to recruit new members, they started a program on a Christian radio where they would talk about their beliefs and try to tell people, hey, this is Free Love Ministries. This is what we believe. The thing is, they were so radical that the actual Christian radio kicked them off because they started first saying things that most Christians would agree with, but then it started to get a little bit weird. It was very heavy on the like demons and demons and demons.
Well, we're talking about fellowship with demons. Who you fellowshipping? Jesus Christ or demons? They're full of the devil. They're full of demons. They're full of demon seed. Praise God.
And the demon thing, it's common. A lot of religions will like talk about demons, but theirs was a little bit weird. So they would be like, demons are the reason why we have karate or karate, whatever. They were like, obviously don't like the gays.
Some of the men were very effeminate, almost half queer. May I say homosexual.
But that's most traditional, Abrahamic religions, truly. But then also it was like, fairy tales are demonic. You can't watch TV or listen to the radio. They were talking bad about the radio while being on the radio. And there's this video that I found from back then where James is kind of saying that we went on there and we talked shit and that's why they kicked us off.
It don't do you any good to get on TV or even on radio. We've been on radio several times. They kicked us off. It don't do any good. They don't want to hear about Jesus Christ. They don't want to hear the truth. We was dismissed from radio twice because we told the truth.
Now that they felt ostracized by the Christian community, they not only hated radio, but they hated television. Remember, it's the one-eyed devil.
Because we don't allow televisions in this ministry. It's against all rules and regulations. Because we don't need a cursed object in our midst. And if you can't handle that rule and regulation, then you don't belong with ACMTC. It's a home invader. It's a soul invader. You may not have Buddha or Confucius, or a picture of an Indian statue or some African statue, but you got your television set is an idol. Yeah. I call it the one-eyed devil. The little cartoons for your little son and daughter in the morning, witchcraft. We finally, after a year, got rid of the TV, and I had to cast many television demons out of my children. And Christians will defend this stuff, saying, there's nothing wrong. You know what? We need a revolution. We need to take all TV sets in Christian homes and dump them in the garbage. My God. We used to have 2 women up here when we first got started in this ministry. I wonder why they always rushed out the door, and I found out later they had a rush home watch Dynasty. And this went on for a long time. And they was both ex-lesbians. All right, I think that's enough to let you know about the one-eyed devil.
And at this time, okay, Tammy Faye Baker and Jim Baker were really big on the like Christian television evangelist thing. Remember, I did a video about them. Okay, it's called Holy Water. No. What's the video called? It's crazy, the title. Heaven, Hell, and Holy Water Enemas. I did that. Stand by it. They really did not like them.
The trash that we got coming over the blue tube called religious program is nothing but a bunch of junk. Jim and Tammy Baker has proved that out. You know, we have enough problems in the world with lust, let alone some people like Tammy coming on with half of her breast popped out of her dress. I'd like to see the devil beat out of some of these people calling themselves Christian leaders. They're vulgar.
Even the clip that I found, because I'm like, wait, isn't this on TV? And he's like, you guys are saying that I'm on TV, but this isn't TV, this is a monitor.
Now, I know people say, well, I must have a television to even watch your videos because we video the messages. No, you don't need a television. You can get a monitor. I've heard people say, well, you got a television set. No, I don't have a television set. I have a monitor.
So once they felt ostracized from the Christian community that they were trying to be a part of, they were like, you know what? The world is ending, because why else would this happen to us? It's apocalypse. And this is where they began the really militant side of things, because Leela would change her name to Deborah. They started also calling themselves generals and dressing in military style uniforms. Again, this could have been from the Salvation Army. With the whole apocalyptic thing is also, and I've noticed this very common in cults, once they start talking about the apocalypse, you know what's coming next? The leader is going to be a prophet. They're going to have a vision. It's usually a vision of the apocalypse.
She did it. She said it. I knew it. All this time I've known it. She's a channeler. Yeah, a channeler for God. Huh?
So she's like, I'm a prophet. My name's General Deborah. The world is ending. You know, fuck karate. One of the visions that Deborah then had was that there was a quote, true spirit-led Christianity is war. This is where it's like they're in a constant state of spiritual warfare. Now, you hear about this a lot. People say, you know, and it's biblical or whatever, spiritual warfare, but they meant it literally. So they were, during her services or sermons, they would slay demons with spiritual swords. You know what I mean? And they were in their military fatigues with invisible swords, slaying invisible demons because they're in spiritual warfare. So that's what was happening. This is when they rebranded, because this doesn't give Free Love Ministries anymore. This gives their new name, which is Aggressive Christianity Missions Training Corps. And remember, they're the generals, and they would give their followers different things like captain, sergeant. All the kids were privates, and they all were dressing in this military uniform. And every day they were waging spiritual warfare against demons, karate, fairy tales. According to Sarah, she says that her dad, James, would kind of get jealous of her mom, Deborah, because he would be like, well, how come I'm not getting visions? Like, why are you just getting visions? And she said that her mom would tell her dad, I'm the vessel, all right? You should be just happy you're general. I'm general, I'm the vessel, I am the prophet. So shut up and let me do my thing. What they were teaching and preaching was that women should submit to men, that this is biblical, this is what God wants. But again, there's a loophole for Deborah because she is a prophet. So she actually was really in charge. They were both like kind of at first equally in charge. Remember that guy who he hitchhiked with said that he was the gospel of Jesus Christ. But now Deborah done hitchhiked, done hijacked the whole thing and is like, yeah, maybe you're the gospel, but I'm the prophet. So, you know, fall in rank. Now they have 50 members, okay? And they have this home in Sacramento, but they need more space. So they buy these 3 homes that are next to the home they have, and those 3 homes share a backyard, and that kind of becomes their compound, or as they would call it, Fort Freedom. Because remember, they're fighting a war. And their home that the Greens lived in, That was known as the Citadel. And the other 3 homes were called the barracks. Okay. Now, remember how I told you that Sarah was starting to feel finally normal and happy and had a sense of routine and friends and stuff? Well, they ruined that because they pulled her out of school once they started the Fort Freedom and all this shit and homeschooled her, although I don't even think you could call it that because their routine was really crazy. Everything was super strict, regimented, and militaristic. So they would like everybody had to be at the Citadel at 5 a.m. for the invisible sword demon slaying sessions. And then they would maybe get breakfast, but a lot of times they were fasting. Again, sleep deprivation, food deprivation, very culty type shit. They also couldn't sleep very much because they would wake them up in the middle of the night before their 5 a.m. sermon and make them pray, and then they would have them fast, and then they would have the privates or the kids do homeschooling for a couple of hours, but really it was mostly just chores and so much labor. As for money, they opened a custom framing shop, and everyone in Fort Freedom had to work at this frame shop, and they had to give them the money, of course, because it's God's army. What are you doing? What do you need money for? We need it for the spiritual weapons to fight the spiritual war. These invisible swords are expensive. And if they were to complain, okay, they got hit with a switch, a belt, and sometimes even worse, way worse. So this is like when they started doing the fucked up shit that I need to tell you about. So let's start mild and we'll get to how it got crazy because it was a slow progression. It didn't happen overnight. So it all started in the basement of the Citadel. Because what would happen is that Deborah would say someone was possessed. They had a demon inside them. Maybe they didn't listen to her right away. Maybe they complained, talked back. Maybe they were hungry and they asked for extra food. Demon. In order for her to believe that this demon was out of them, they would have to do really crazy, elaborate things like screaming, coughing, throwing up, like actual barfing. And then she would be like, oh, the demon's out of you now. So here's a quote from a former member about these quote unquote deliverance sessions. That's what they were called. She said, you're wanting to be part of what everyone else is doing and you want to be accepted. So you go along with the whole process. I could feel a pain in my core, and in your mind, you think it's real. To me, it was a sign. She, Deborah, really is God's prophet. And then they did the typical culty things like you can't talk to your friends and family. You can't consume anything in mainstream culture. No music, no TV, no magazines, no books. Like everything is what we give you and what we tell you, and that's it. Because, like, the thing is, TV is whoredom. And even there's a speech I found where James is talking about how, like, when your wife is watching TV, she's being a whore with the TV instead of being with her husband.
Now, we studied a study a while back on whoredoms. If you'd like, order that tape, order the tapes on whoredoms. I think there's 3 tapes. Praise God. Pornography is free if you pay for it, of course. Whoredoms is something that you love other than Jesus Christ. Just like a whore, why make your husband jealous with a second lover called a television set? Whoredom. A television is a whoredom, but that's what a whoredom is. It's something that you love. It's something you make love to. And how many Christians make love to their television sets? Something to think about.
Remember how I told you what they did in terms of the like hitting the kids, spare the rod, spoil the child. Okay, they took it to the extreme. A former member said, quote, that her son was beaten with a piece of wood with a nail sticking out of it, and that his head was gashed open at one point. And other members said that they're still haunted by the sound of the children's screams. And guess what now? You got this kid with a gash open. Do you think that they would get medical treatment? No, because why? First of all, the real reason is that Deborah didn't want to pay for it. The reason she gave them is that God is who heals, not these doctors, these worldly doctors that are probably heathens. No, you have to pray, you have to fast, and then God will heal you. And if you're not getting healed or your child is not getting healed, it's because they're sinning and they have a demon in them. In some cases, this lack of medical care resulted in children's death. And there are people who say children died back then, but there's no proof of that. But later on, you'll see there is proof. Like they actually found a dead child that was buried on the property, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Then when it came to childbirth, again, no medical care. So again, you go down to the basement of the Citadel, and Deborah, with no training, is going to birth the child, right? And they would go through this excruciating birth with no care at all. And again, people allege that in those situations, sometimes there was death, allegedly. Then once this child would be born, it was like a new soul for God's army. And it was like, oh, private, whatever is born. You know what I'm saying? It was like that because they're just like procreating as much as possible to build God's army for this war that's coming. Okay, so remember when I told you about the bear tribe and Sun Bear, who was like in his 50s, and his lover was Mora in her 20s? Okay, this is where Mora comes back to the story. They ended up taking Mora with them. So Mora was an early member, and now she's back into the picture because what they did to her was super messed up. So remember, when they're doing these deliverance sessions, these exorcisms, people are puking and jumping and screaming and stuff. And the thing with Mara is she could not get herself to do that. Like she wasn't acting crazy enough during these exorcisms, and Deborah started to really resent her for that. According to Mara, she said, I was always in trouble because my demons wouldn't come out. She said she could see into your heart. She looked at you like she was looking beyond your eyes and into your soul. It was a very scary look. Because Mora was not reacting like this, and Deborah kept saying that, you're like not letting go of the demons inside of you. When she got pregnant, and again, Deborah said that you have a demon inside of you, and now she's doing this exorcism while Mora's pregnant, and Mora's still not doing all these things. Mora's husband at the time said to her, if you don't let go of these demons, our baby is going to be born possessed. Okay. And so she tried and tried, but it was never good enough. And so then when the baby was born, she talks about this incident that happened that really changed everything for her. She said, I witnessed a lot of child abuse. We were taught that we had to be hard on the children and raise them up to be Christian soldiers. When my son was 6 months old, we were in one of the services they hold all the time, and he made a cute noise that distracted everybody. I was instructed to take him into another room and beat him. I couldn't do it. So this little cute noise that made everyone go, oh, while Deborah's preaching, it pissed her off. She's like, what the fuck? This is about me. And this baby is being cute? Like, beat him. And so Mora's here like she can't do it. So what does Deborah say to her? She says to her, you are a spiritual adulterer and you need to be punished for this. You're the reason why your baby is possessed by the demon. You couldn't let it go when I was trying to get it out when you were pregnant. Now look at this baby being all cute. Demon. She literally put her in this shed that was in the backyard of the Fort Freedom with no heat, no bed, no toilet for months, and had her do intense physical labor, some of it totally unnecessary. Like some things were cleaning trash cans and stuff. Other things were just carrying heavy rocks from here to here for no reason, like as a punishment. And then she renamed her because she names all the people, everyone gets new names. So she renamed her now to Forsaken. And she was like shunned. And in that atmosphere where it's like super culty as fuck, being shunned and being treated like that was like the worst thing for Mora. She felt like, oh my God, this is nuts. And now her husband and the baby are there. And who knows what the husband is? The husband hitting the baby like Deborah's telling him to? Is that why he's not coming to see you in the shed? Because he's in good graces? Like, you know what I mean? It's really fucked up now. So Mora's going crazy in this shed. There were 2 other women who got the same treatment for disobeying, and she also put them in the shed and gave them new names. One was named Despised.
My name was changed to Despised because I had despised God and chose to cherish my family. And that's why that was the name I was given, that God now despised me.
And the other one was named Barren. After Mora's punishment was done and she came back to join the group, Deborah was like, you know what? You're still demonic as fuck and we don't want you anymore. So they kicked her out. They like excommunicated her. And at first this was like so devastating because she's no longer with her son or her husband or the community that she's come to rely on. She's all by herself. But then as time went on, she started to realize, like, oh my God, I was in a cult. And so she ended up suing. And she sued them for $20 million. Okay. And this is back in 1989. And she said that it was false imprisonment and abuse and all these horrible things. Well, what ended up happening was that the judge did rule in her favor, but instead of giving her 20 million, he awarded her $1 million. But again, remember, this is in 1989. That's a lot of money. In order to get this money, the judge ruled that Fort Freedom, all those properties would be seized and sold, and whatever they could get would be given to Mara. Well, what do you think Deborah did? She was pissed. She instructed her army to basically destroy the entire property.
The members of the cult were instructed to demolish the insides of the buildings.
I'm saying we had nothing to do with vandalism, and I can prove that vandalism had taken place to us many times when we lived there.
Wreck it completely to where it's uninhabitable and has no value if you try to sell it, at least not the value it had before. And then they went on the run. They end up going to Klamath Falls in Oregon, and they changed their name. So now they're known as Death Force Team. The lawsuit and all that stuff, it wasn't really good for their image or anything like that. And they actually lost members. So before they had over 50 members, now they only have 19 members. But these members are loyal. And now since they destroyed the home and they had this judgment against them, they didn't really have money. So what did they do? They started dumpster diving, not just for food to eat, but for food to sell. Yes, Deborah had them change their clothes. No longer are they wearing military fatigues. Now they're wearing like Amish-like clothing, and they're getting this dumpster food that is like bread or some ingredients to try to put something together from the dumpster and sell it to people as Amish people making like a wholesome homemade meal from our farm, but it's a dumpster bread. Also, at this point now, Sarah, her daughter, she's 16 years old, and she really wants to be a doula. A doula is kind of like a midwife, but not exactly. It's a different certification, but it's kind of the same thing in that it is someone who's trained to assist in childbirth. And Deborah wasn't having it. She was like, you will not be a doula. You're crazy. You're a demon, not a doula. And now they're thinking, Deborah and James, her parents, we need to marry her off. She's getting a little unruly. We need to get a man to put her in her place, her husband. And so when she was 17, they married her to a guy who was 10 years older than her. And his name, they gave him the name Peter Green. Remember, they're the Greens, right? James Green, Deborah Green, their daughter Sarah Green, and now their son-in-law, they named him Peter Green. Now, Peter Green's real name is actually Mike Brandon, and he comes from a very wealthy family. I don't think he's even in prison, and when you hear the charges against him, you're going to be mad about it. But he was able to buy them properties. There are all these properties that they're going to have over the years that are in trusts and that were paid up front, all cash, and put in a trust name, never in their name. And they have so many properties all around, and they're able to get away from the law because of this backing that they have from allegedly Mike Brandon, I feel like my conspiracy theory is that they kind of like were like, here's our daughter, here's our 17-year-old daughter, get us a house type shit. Now it's the early 90s. Remember that lawsuit and everything happened in 1989. By the early 90s, they are now in New Mexico, again, buying property through trusts with potentially the backing of this guy. And Sarah gets pregnant. The thing is that Sarah was very, very depressed. She, at one point, was like 79 pounds. So when she got pregnant and gave birth, the baby was very premature. It looked like it was a baby born by a starving mother. And so it was so bad that even though Deborah was totally against medical care, she allowed them to take the baby to the hospital because it was that dire. Well, after they kind of did emergency stuff with the baby and Deborah felt like the baby was okay now, she was like, okay, we're taking the baby, we're going to leave. But then the doctors were like, no, the baby's still too small. It needs to stay here a little bit longer. And so she makes this huge scene. And finally, one of the doctors is like, okay, you can take the baby, but you have to come back in a week. And we need to see the baby again in a week. And she said, okay, but that didn't happen. This experience would make Deborah even more distrustful and fearful of doctors and the medical stuff because she felt like they could potentially, have control over the people that she wants to have control over. So now she starts saying none of her followers can get birth certificates for the children. She doesn't want any record that these kids exist so that there's no interference from child services or the government or doctors or anything. Then she started instructing her members to bury any photos, destroy any evidence of these kids having existed, because people would start to say things like you had people who left who were saying kids are being abused, like you've got Mara and people like that. And so police started investigating, and that's when she was like, destroy the evidence that these children exist. We're not getting them birth certificates. She trained the privates, the kids, to hide if police ever showed up, if they were seen by police, not to talk. And if they had to talk to police, they were coached on what to say to make it seem like everything was fine and there was no problem. So there were times throughout the years that people would report stuff and the police would come and they would do a raid and stuff like that. But they would either not find any children, or the children were like trained to speak to them with their little military thing, very proper, very nice. And they were like, you know what? This is kind of cute. Like, okay, I guess it's not that big of a deal. Like, they're just good Christians. Like, it's not a problem. And nothing happened. Also, another thing that Deborah was doing was going on missions again, but now to Africa. They would go on these missions in Africa, and they were looking for land there because Deborah had this idea like, listen, the pressure is getting kind of hot here in the States. Maybe we should buy property in Africa, and we have already our missionary there. We'll get our followers and everything, and nobody will bother us. Like the American authorities will be off our backs. But then also in 1997, she gets this idea. And the idea is that she comes home from a mission one day and she tells her daughter, Sarah, who now has had her second child very recently. And so she is still lactating and breastfeeding and looks like someone who just gave birth. And she tells her daughter, Sarah, I have this amazing idea. There is a woman in Uganda who's pregnant, and we are going to take the baby because we're going to give the baby a better life, and it's just best that the baby's with us. But we need to do like a closed adoption. We don't really want people getting involved in doing anything official. So we need you to go to Uganda, take this baby, go to the American consulate, tell them, since you're lactating and you're breastfeeding, that you had this baby with a Ugandan man and it's your baby, so American baby, half or whatever, and that you want to come to the States with your baby. And so Sarah ends up doing it and it works. And so now it's like the late 90s. They have this little Ugandan girl who they've taken in. And Sarah says that she loved her. She had her two sons and this baby girl, and she was like supposedly in love and everything. I mean, I'm not doubting that she loved her. She did love her, but she wasn't happy. Sarah wasn't happy. And what's about to happen is pretty fucking sad. The thing was, everything seemed totally fine until a few months later, the Ugandan baby's aunt was in the States. And she knew that this ministry, because they were there and, ministering to them in Uganda, existed and where it was and everything like that. And she wanted to see her niece because she was in the States. And Deborah freaked out. For some reason, Deborah thought that she was going to come and take her niece and say, no, this is my blood, niece. I want her. I'm taking her. So they decide to flee, to run. And this is where it got really crazy for Sarah, because they were in this caravan and they're driving across from state to state. They went to Colorado, they went to Utah, and they're trying to find a new place to settle in. And they decide, instead of this small town in New Mexico that they were in, they are now going to go to the desert where there's nobody. I mean, at the time of this article that I read, it said population 58, but when I Googled it now, it had 0 population. And it was showing the years, the maximum was 100 people. Fence Lake is the outskirts of where they were. They were straight up in the desert. And before that, I don't think I mentioned where they were in New Mexico before that. They're a town called, was it Barico? Oh, Barino. I said Barico, like Jericho. I don't know what the fuck. Barino. I hope I'm saying that right. But they were in Barino when they were pretending to be like Amish and stuff with the dumpster bread. They, according to Sarah, that town, at least when she would go out and do that, sell the dumpster bread, she would have some social interaction, something. Now that they're in this desert where there's nobody, she said that she fell into a deep depression. Sarah's mental health was getting really bad. She felt so lonely. Then in 1999, a guy shows up and joins the cult. And this guy, he's from down under. Okay. He's like Australian or from New Zealand. She says she's not sure where, but one of those. And she had a crush on him. Okay. He was closer in age to her. She was more attracted to him. They start talking. They start going on these long walks in the desert and talking. And she really has feelings for him. And so she confides in him. She tells him, like, hey, I want to run away. I don't want to be here anymore. And they start plotting, planning, and scheming how they're going to escape. The plan that they came up with involved Sarah leaving the kids. In her mind, she's like, I can't take them with me because I'm not going to be able to take care of them or support them. At least here they have their basic needs met. And that she has a plan. She's going to leave. She's going to get on her feet. And then she's going to take her kids back. And everything's going to be amazing. And this guy is going to be with her. And amazing. Except that's not what happened at all. What ends up happening, now keep in mind, at this point, Sarah is 26 years old. In the middle of the night, she has her bags packed. She says her goodbyes. She has this like last sweet moments with her kids. And then in the middle of the night, she and this guy, they run away. They end up hitchhiking to LA. Then they take like a bus to Seattle and they're homeless. And so they're living under the freeway. And the guy's like, you know what? I'm going to Canada. I got a visa to Canada. I'm going to Canada. And he leaves without her. And so now she's by herself in Seattle from being totally sheltered in this cult and not knowing anything about the world. And so she ends up, okay, going to this Christian shelter and she stays there. And while she's at the shelter at the church, she gets a job at a coffee shop. Then from there, she makes enough money to rent a room from a nudist couple in Seattle, sleeping in a room there on the floor with like a sleeping bag. Meanwhile, over at the, I don't even know if there's a name for it. They're at the Death Force team in the desert over there. Deborah is spiraling because her daughter Sarah ran away. According to a former member whose name is Juliana Gudino, but she went by, she goes by Julie now because that's her name, but she was renamed Elizabeth Edwards by Deborah. But she ended up being with this cult for 20 years and leaving, and she spoke out about what happened after Sarah left. She said, quote, she went cuckoo. I watched that lady go crazy in front of my face. She said that she started fasting like crazy. She became damn near emaciated. She said that she told Sarah's kids that their mother, Sarah, was no longer a living soul, that she was just a dead person on her way to hell. And she started becoming so cruel to the followers that she had, especially that little girl that they took from Uganda. The things they did to this girl were outrageous. And I'm going to give you a trigger warning because you're going to want to break your screen when I tell you what they did. You're going to be angry. That's probably why I started this video so goddamn heated. Especially you're going to be even pissed when you see how the shit ends up. Okay? So, they tortured this girl. Okay? First of all, Deborah herself basically made her her slave. She would make her do insane amounts of labor. She would whip her with what's called a cat o' nine tails whip, where it's like a rope with 9 knotted cords, okay, and whip her like that. They said they treated her like a dog. She was whipped bloody for the most minor of infractions. And then they violated this little girl. And when I say they, I mean Deborah and her son-in-law, Peter Green, Sarah's husband. And this little girl, from when she was 7 years old, he the allegations, this is what the actual court allegations against him are: 100 counts of criminal sexual penetration of a child, and R-wording her. According to this girl, she says she was R-worded by him at least 4 times a week from when she was 7 years old. And Deborah also had those charges, the penetration stuff. And there's more. So, according to the prosecutors in this case, they said that Deborah would whip her in the legs, beat her on the legs, beat her on the body to the point where she could barely walk. They said that the girl then developed rickets, and her bones were so soft and misshapen because they denied her food. She didn't have the nutrients to develop correctly. And they said that there was a very obvious racist thing going on here with Deborah treating her like a slave, like openly. She did all of that because she was so mad that Sarah ran away. Okay? Then she also tried to get one of her members to kidnap this little Mexican kid. She's like got a weird thing for kidnapping kids and torturing them. Like, she's fucking sadistic. So this same person that I told you about, Julie, okay, she had been with them for a long time. She fully believed that Deborah was a prophet. And she said that Deborah told her to go to El Paso, Texas, and quote, find day laborers who had crossed into the United States with children and keep out for these children who were on the street and shouldn't be on the street, and to take them so that we could give them a better life. She said she was instructed to wait until dark and then to just grab a child. Julie said she knew it was wrong, but it didn't stop her at first. She couldn't imagine disobeying Deborah. So she said, quote, it was the end of the week and I happened to see a woman walking towards the bridge going back into Mexico. She had a baby in her hands and a child next to her. She said she walked behind them slowly. In the moment, I just became mechanical. I had a very cold, hard feeling to act out what she had asked me to do. There she was at the Mexican border, tiptoeing behind a young mother and her toddler daughter, about to fulfill a mission she believed had come from God. But then, just as she was about to grab the child, she stopped herself, she says. Quote, what am I doing? It was like a light flashing in your face, waking you up from a dark, dark place that you have allowed someone to push you into. End quote. She said that's when she decided to walk away, never go back. Now let's go back to Sarah, because Sarah is now in Seattle. She's still working at the coffee shop, and she is enjoying her freedom. She's kind of trying to forget about her kids. She's like, I don't really think I could get them back. Maybe they're better off over there, because she had this guilt, right? She still kind of believed her mother's teachings. She still kind of felt like she was wrong. And so there's a part of her that's like, I ran away to have fun. I'm wrong. I'm evil. Let me not take my kids with me and let them be evil with me. And then another part's like, no, it was awful there. My mom's awful. I should save them. But can I? How can I? And she struggled with that. She couldn't get over the guilt that she had, and she missed them so much. So she ended up sending postcards to her kids. Because of these postcards, her mom was able to find out where she was and the phone number, and she ended up calling her daughter and begging her to come back. And Sarah was like, no, I'm not going to come back. And then Deborah put Peter, her evil husband, on the phone. And he was also begging her to come back. And again, she's like, no, I'm not going to come back. This was, by the way, 9 months after she ran away is when they called her and all that. Even though she didn't go back, though, she and her mom started emailing, and she would also email other former members. Apparently, the computer isn't the one-eyed devil. It's a monitor. It's not a TV. Get it right. Deborah's mom says, this is June 2000. She says, praise God, we are all glad to have had contact with you after so many months. You are coming back. You are going to be delivered of the demons that have held you in captivity. And then Sarah would respond saying that she would respond with a lot of like shit talking about herself. It's, self-loathing is what they say here. It says, she said that what she called her sinful little binge in Seattle. is what she called her escape. And then she said, quote, "I still love you all very much, no matter what a mess I've made of my life." And then at the end of an email that she wrote, she signed off as "your worthless daughter who is finally starting to see herself." And then she got pregnant. Yes, from a guy that she met at the coffee shop where she worked. And so once she was pregnant, she really hated herself. She writes this email to a former member at around this time, and she says, "Many days I just wake up hating my whole existence of everything that I have ever done." She said, "I turned 28 yesterday and I felt a lot older than that." But it's a typo because she didn't get to go to school because her mom is a bitch. Okay. So once she gave birth to her baby, she was like, "I have to go back." Like the guilt consumed her. So she came up with this plan. She's like, "I'm going to pretend that I'm joining them and coming back, but really, I'm going to go back and get the three kids, the two boys that she gave birth to, and the little Ugandan girl, and I'm going to get them out of there." So she tells them she wants to come back. They're like, okay. She comes back. And then she decides to ask, I don't know why, instead of snatch, like she didn't ask when she ran away. So I don't know why she thought asking would work. But apparently she brought up the subject of like, hey, the kids could come with me and all that. And they were pissed. They immediately took Sarah and the new baby that she had. They put her on a bus and they said, "Get the fuck out of here." And when she did return, though, also the kids were like young, and the oldest son was pissed. Remember, like Deborah's been telling them, "Your mom left, she's demonic, she abandoned you," all this stuff. So her oldest son wouldn't even come near her, but the youngest son was really happy that she was there. And then this broke my heart. The little girl, the one who was getting tortured by these people, Sarah said that she hugged her the tightest out of all the kids and was the happiest to see her. And then she tried to take them and they kicked her out, and now they were still there left with these monsters. And God, I hate this. And by the way, when she came back, it had been 2 years now since she escaped. Then she had another baby. She had another baby and she ended up moving to New York with the father, but then they broke up. And she, at this point, wasn't even trying to get the kids anymore. She felt like she couldn't do it. There's no way she can get them. And she's now got these two new kids and she's kind of just throwing herself in this new life, trying to forget her old life. She says she had no idea that this abuse was going on. She says she did not know at all. She just thought that they were being raised in this thing that she didn't want, and that it wasn't as bad as it really was. Okay, now it's the early 2000s, and this is when they start having some trouble with the law. They start getting media attention. Ex-members leave and talk to the media, and so now journalists are coming in and reporting things, and they end up getting raided. But again, like I mentioned to you before, when they would get raided, they had the kids all trained and hidden. They had this property in Colorado that they would put the kids in case they would have any type of people coming over, and then they would go there and do stuff. Like they had a whole ass program of how to hide these kids, these privates for God's army. Then this random weird shit happened in 2005. Okay. I found this thing where it's an article. Okay. In October 29th of 2005, General James, aka General Jim, her husband, he gets arrested for attacking two other members and threatening to kill Deborah. So here's the quote. It says, Green allegedly tried to cut Peter Green. Remember, Peter is the fucking evil guy who's abusing the little girl. And Philip Jordan, who's another member. It said Green allegedly tried to cut Peter Green and Philip Jordan with a sickle, a pole with a curved knife at the end, and in turn was beaten on the head and body with walking sticks. He allegedly said he was going to kill them and his wife, Deborah Green, for an unknown reason. Now, I could be speculating. I wonder if he found out something they were doing to the girl and maybe he was upset about it, because a lot of the former members, they say that like he was the nice one. He was kind of the pushover, right? He just kind of was going along with things. It was Deborah who was the mastermind, who was the one really calling all the shots, and the one that was really the most sadistic. Like she had this evil, she was the demon. So a year after this, the little girl, she breaks her femur and has to be taken to the hospital. Now, the members of the cult were told that it was an accident while she was on a swing set. She fell and she broke her femur. Although a lot of them are like, no, they probably beat her so bad they broke her leg to the point where like they felt they had to get her some medical treatment or else they might get in trouble because they're getting raided. They have all this attention on them. If they have a death with a kid on there, it's not going to go over well. Now, because this kid was taken to the hospital and the authorities didn't buy the story or the medical staff didn't buy the story, they called CPS. CPS took the little girl in 2006. But then, okay, that girl was no longer with them now. And now she's in the foster care system and they have this case against them, but the case ends up getting dropped. And then when asked about it after all this shit came to light, this is what they said, okay? What are they called? They're called the New Mexico Children, Youth and Families Department, aka CYFD. The CYFD spokesman said, due to New Mexico state law, we are unable to release any information regarding any prior investigations that the agency is involved in. We do currently have an active investigation into this matter and will continue to work closely with law enforcement within our legal means. So basically, nothing happened then and probably nothing's going to happen, because whenever I read within our legal means, it's like our hands are tied. We can't do anything, because this all came to a head and got exposed way after 2006. So at least she was taken from there. Now, Sarah says she was told that CYFD took the girl, but they gave her a totally different story, that they looked the evil CYFD taking her baby and your baby's been taken and all this. And that she didn't know that, that the situation was as bad as it was. Now it is 2012. Deborah's pissed. She's like, these traitors, they're leaving. And she's thinking about the fact that her daughter is gone. And she sends this crazy email to her daughter, Sarah. The email says in all caps, stop behaving as a spoiled child before God. Realize you are a sinner and repent before you spend eternity in hell. A year after that, a flu came through with the cults. There was this virus going around. And what ended up happening, because remember, she doesn't believe in going to the doctor. If your child is sick, you have to pray and fast. And if your child isn't getting better, it's because you're a sinner. And there was a child, a little boy, who died from not getting treatment for the flu in 2014. His name was Enoch, and he was 12 years old. This went under the radar for 3 years. He died in 2014. In 2017, his father, who had left and all of a sudden lost contact with him, went to police to file a missing persons report and be like, my son is in a cult and I haven't heard from him. Can you please check on him? And that is when cops went to the wherever they were in the desert. Police raided, and instead of finding Enoch, they found his grave, and it had a stone on there with his name on it. It says that by the time they discovered those remains, he had been dead and buried for so long that it was impossible to determine from an autopsy how he had died. But then after they started talking to other members and former members, they believed that he died from the flu that went untreated. Okay, the sheriff, his name is Tony Mace. He said, we learned that Enoch died a horrible death. That was our way to get in and figure out what was going on. They said that he was denied medical treatment and had become septic from the flu, that his mom said that he was getting pus coming out of his forehead and all this, but like Deborah wouldn't let her get treatment, and she believed Deborah, and so she prayed and prayed, and then he died and was like, this is God's will. And I don't know what the fuck is wrong with these people. But after this happened, police start a investigation. This investigation that they started, it went on for 2 years, and they were monitoring them. They were like, listen, we got to do this right. We only have one shot, because these people, they flee, they get property, they go here, they go there. They're hard to find. They're very elusive, very secretive. So they're like, we can't spook them, basically. So they make them think that, oh, okay, he died from natural causes and we can't figure it out, and make them feel like it is not, like they're not under surveillance, they're not in trouble. And what they end up doing is they start interviewing former members, and that's when they end up finding about Sarah, the daughter, and they go to contact her and they talk to her. And at first, she doesn't want to talk to them. She's afraid. She's ignoring their calls. Eventually, she talks to them and she tells them the truth. That's when they find out about the little girl. They find out she's been put in foster care, and they find her, and she has been adopted now, and they interview her, and that's when she tells them about the horrific abuse. And that is when they go in there, and this is now August 20th, 2017. They're at this camp in New Mexico, and General Deborah is giving a sermon when she gets arrested. Okay, she's wearing her whole little outfit, and they have body cam footage of this. It's crazy.
That's good. That's good.
They move in closer, triggering an alarm.
Go ahead and stand up.
Who are you? Can you identify yourself?
I'm with the sheriff's office here. I'm going to help you out.
According to the group's website, Deborah and her husband, James Green, recruit people for God's army.
Could we ask what this is about?
You'll be able to talk to the detective, ma'am. Okay? Gun suppressors. Guns with suppressors.
Now, can you guys all hold hands? Can you guys all hold hands?
During this arrest, they find 11 children. Some of them were as young as 4. The privates dressed in that military garb. And they say, once police talk to them, that they're being held there against their will. Then they find 4 members with 11 kids as well, also, that were, and some money, that were in this van that left the compound. They saw them try to flee. They end up stopping them.
Arrest? Arrest.
Why? Put your hands behind your back, please.
Why? We have a warrant for your arrest.
That's the only paperwork I have.
Your birth certificates or the children's?
My,
Where were you guys running off to?
We're going to go talk to our lawyer.
Amos, Victoria, Ruth, and Timothy River were arrested and all charged with not reporting the birth of their children.
They put all the kids in foster care. They charged Deborah with 2 counts of kidnapping, 8 counts of child abuse, 3 counts of evidence tampering, and 4 counts of criminal sexual penetration of a child under 13. I want to throw up. And 1 count of intentional child abuse resulting in death. This is for Enoch's death. They also arrested that son of a bitch, Peter, and charged him with 100 counts of sexual penetration of a child under 13 and another 100 counts of sexual contact of a child under 13. Joshua Green, her son, they arrested him for failure to obtain or report a birth because he didn't get a birth certificate for his child. And then Enoch's mom, her name is Stacy Miller. She also tried to flee when they started. Well, she did flee once they came in that first time, and were asking about her son and found out he was dead. She had fled, but they end up finding her and charging her as well. Also, Deborah's husband, General Jim, he also got arrested for kidnapping and child abuse. And so after all these arrests, it was all over the news. It was crazy. And they released a statement, the cult, on their website, saying that it was all totally false, that this was some kind of smear campaign against them, and that it was not true.
She's a liar. She just lied.
So why would they lie if you treated them so well?
That's what I'd like to know. It shocked us why they lied.
Then when Deborah, who loves to fast and does all these fasts and stuff like that, when she was in jail, she went on a hunger strike. And so they ended up having to put her in a hospital to force feed her. And then she tried to say she got malaria, but then they weren't sure if that was even true. And then she said she had trouble walking. And then the guard was like, nah, she was walking fine. But now that we're putting her in this courtroom, all of a sudden she can't walk and she has malaria and all this shit. The officers were like, she was totally fine when we took her into custody. And now all of a sudden for her arraignment, she needs assistance walking. She wanted to look feeble and old because she's manipulative. Demon. That was in 2017. Now it's 2018 and it's time for the trial. And the girl from Uganda testified, but they never showed her face. She doesn't want to be revealed.
Emotionally, she broke me.
A weaker person would not have survived. You're a strong person. That means you can go on being strong.
Sarah, she also testified. Then after this testimony, Sarah, who at this point had not seen that girl for 16 years. She gets a text basically asking if she wants to meet up with the girl. And she's like, yes, 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 I want to meet up with the girl. This broke my heart. Reading this in the article, I want to read you the quotes, okay? It says that the girl and her adopted mother appeared riding up an escalator. Sarah dropped her bags and ran to them. She asked the mother if she could hug the girl, and the woman said yes. Crying, Sarah and the girl, now a young woman, at this point she was in her 20s, early 20s, embraced. Mom, said the girl. Kinda, said Sarah. They were overjoyed to see each other. You're so beautiful, said Sarah. Thank you for being so brave. And then the little girl, she's a young woman now. She said, I thought I lost you forever. And then Sarah said that she promised to explain everything when she got back to New York. She said, I'm so sorry. I love you so fucking much. And then they ended up reconnecting, and Sarah was able to connect the girl with her biological mom. And this girl and the biological mom are very close and talk all the time. And she's very happy with her adopted mom. And it seems like, well, she's not fully healed, because I'll tell you what she said at the sentencing. Because before I tell you about the sentencing, she was found guilty. I'm all over the place today. But the jury did not take long to deliberate, and they were like guilty on all charges. So at the sentencing, the girl spoke out. This poor girl, okay, in the sentencing, she said that she had to get 11 surgeries to fix the bones that Deborah broke. The girl asked for the maximum, which was 108 years, but the judge only gave Deborah 72 years. Keep in mind, when she was arrested, she was like in her 70s. So 72 years, 108 years doesn't really matter, except here's where it gets fucked up. See, the bullshit of this is trying to come out of my body, the demon of this. Because here's what happened. So after Deborah was found guilty and sentenced to 72 years, her husband, Peter, who was going to plead not guilty and go to trial, he was like, better not. So he ends up taking a plea deal for 10 years. And then remember Peter, the husband who had those like over 100 counts of what he did? This fucking guy, okay, his trial kept getting delayed. And remember, they were arrested at the end of 2017. Okay, now it's been over 2 years and he's been in jail. This is like you're denying him his right to a speedy trial. It's been over 2 years.
Peter Green was released after an order by District Judge Amanda Sanchez Villalobos after his attorneys argued he was unfairly being held, being that his trial has been delayed several times.
And he ended up getting let out on house arrest in 2020. And you remember what happened in 2020? The pandemic. So it seems like he's been on house arrest ever since then. And everything that I found says that his trial is still ongoing. So he's technically this guy with all these properties under trust and stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure he's in a nice place, in a comfortable home after having done that. And it gets even worse after that, because Deborah appealed. She appealed and she got a new trial. Let me explain to you what happened. Deborah ends up getting these really good lawyers and filing appeal after appeal. And she ended up getting a new trial. And it was on the basis that there was evidence, exculpatory evidence, that the prosecution did not share. And then in November of 2020, a New Mexico judge vacated the convictions and sentence associated with the girl's allegations of abuse, ordering a new trial on the grounds that the state unlawfully suppressed exculpatory evidence. So what was the evidence that was exculpatory, meaning that they didn't give it to the defense? It was, quote, okay, a psychological assessment of the girl in 2006, which showed no signs of psychologically being traumatized or depressed, and that she denied abuse. Here's my thing about that. Have you heard of compartmentalization? Have you heard of it? It's a real thing. It's called coping. Okay. You would be surprised how children can detach and function and act normal with insane trauma that they've suffered when it's all they've ever known. That's their normal. You'd be surprised what humans can accept and function with if that's all they've ever known. you would be surprised the conditions people can live, the abuse they can suffer. Humans are very adaptable, and children particularly are conditioned to behave a certain way. If she got punished for complaining or crying, if they were training the kids how to talk to police, you don't think she got trained how to do that? You don't think she was afraid if she said something? Because she could be brought back to the camp, the compound, whatever the fuck they live at, and now she's going to get in even more trouble, get even more abuse because she told if they didn't believe her. And she probably thought no one would believe her, or whatever she thought. I don't know. I'm speculating here. But I'm just saying, to me, a, a psychological assessment of a girl saying that she denied the abuse and didn't show signs doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen. So the prosecution, they fucked up, in my opinion. If it's true they didn't, they suppressed this because they thought there's enough evidence, I believe, from things like the fact that they're witnesses.
The thing that got me the most while I was in the ministry was the abuse that was done to my children and other children there. There's a little girl there that's 2 years old that gets spanked in between the thighs with a spatula.
The fact that Peter was accused of stuff and she remembered it and mentioned it later on. What benefit does this girl have later on when she didn't even contact authorities? They came to her in 2017 after all these things happened and they found a dead boy buried there that they wouldn't treat. And then they came to her and she said everything. And they went to the daughter and she said what she experienced. And everyone had, every single person who left had a horror story. Maura talking about how she wanted her to beat the 6-month-old with a belt. And you mean to tell me that you thought you couldn't argue against this psychological assessment? What kind of trash prosecutor is this in whatever county this is in New Mexico? I mean, geez, this pissed me off. I say, you guys fucked up so hard because you could have argued this. Why did you do that? It says, while the state previously disclosed a summary of the doctor's evaluation, it failed to seek or actually disclose any records related to the actual exam. He also ordered her to be released, but did leave the door open for her case to be taken to trial. And the district attorney's office said they're currently analyzing the ruling and the case to see what their next steps will be. I found the law firm that represented her and got her released. They're called Harrison and Hart, and they're very proud of this on their website. And this is what they say. Harrison and Hart filed post-trial motions, conducted an independent investigation, and represented Ms. Green at a lengthy evidentiary hearing, which got her convictions vacated because of Brady violations and the government's suppression of exculpatory evidence. The court granted a new trial. Our attorneys continued to represent Ms. Green following the post-conviction proceedings and successfully obtained a dismissal of these charges. Now, keep in mind, at the time, it wasn't for that little boy Enoch's death, which was another charge she had. That was a separate case. And because she had gotten such a heavy sentence and she was so old, they didn't want to waste, I don't know, resources, time, energy, trying her for that. So that's still a thing that's looming. And I don't understand why they're not trying to get her for that. I don't know. I don't know. And last but not least, her husband also got released on May 4th, 2023. So they're both free. As far as I know, they're alive. But yeah, so as it stands, none of them are actually in prison for what they did. So there you have it. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Classy for sponsoring this video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.